This is the second part of the drawing in which I'm placing the drawing on our, this is a makeshift light table basically, just to produce enough light and enough space so we can get a good shot of it on the camera so I can show you some visual representation of what we're doing here. Now basically, any kind of light table you're working with, regardless of the size, you're going to do it generally the same way. It's going to have the same effect. You want to tape down your drawing so that way it doesn't slide around underneath you, so you can always keep your reference in the exact same spot. Now, like what I said before, you want to use a felt tip pen. Brand isn't terribly important, but you don't want to use a tip that's too small. You want to use something that's got a little bit of thickness to it, so that way you can kind of build it up and calligraphy lines if necessary. And I'm going to go ahead and start from the top left and work my way down to the right. So that way I'm not actually working over myself and smearing any of the pen marks. A felt tip pen is actually much better to use than a ballpoint pen. Your line integrity with a felt pen is much better. It gives you a much clearer, more readable line. And also the line integrity is very consistent. It gives you a smooth, even line, as opposed to a ballpoint pen where you have imperfections in the paper you're using and the surface texture, and it kind of tends to break the line up a little bit. And when that happens, if you try to copy that and throw that through the stencil machine, that's going to translate directly onto the skin, and the stencil you're trying to follow on the person's skin is going to be you know, spotted. There's going to be a little holidays, a little empty and little missing spots in it, and making it more difficult to follow. Now, as you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm going over the pencil, and I'm also making little corrections here and there. Yeah, there's certain spots where, you know, I had a little bit of sketchy pencil marks on there, and again, that's why I didn't bother erasing it or fine-tuning with a pencil, because I would have had to do this anyway, so it's basically just wasting time, and we definitely don't like to waste time. And being that this is a bird, giving him a little bit of texture to it, giving him a little bit of hints of feathers here and there. Now, if you also see what I'm doing, all the little detail spots that I'm adding on here, I'm keeping my lines tight, clean, smooth, but not too close together. If you see, any area that starts to get real small and tight, they get more simple, the shapes do. So, you know, on the wings where they're kind of open in the hand area, you know, you can put all the little details in there, the little feathers and whatnot, to give it some texture and shape. But when you're working with areas, you know, down here like the legs, any details you put in there, it's got to be relatively simple and basic, just a little hint of detail here and there, because the area you're working with is so small that you don't want your lines to be too close together, again, because the healing process will start to blur your lines together. Plus, also, you got to keep in mind, you can actually do a lot of the detail in how you lay your color in. For example, instead of clustering it up, the drawing with, you know, lines all over the place, creating all the detail. If you have an area, say the leg for example, and you want to add detail on there, you don't actually have to do that with adding any exact lines representing detail. You could do variations in color, like for example, start off at red at the top and then fade a little bit of orange, then yellow in as it gets to a high point like on the knee there, and then back down to orange, then red again, and then back out to yellow towards the tip of the toes. And that'll basically, your color transition, you can bring a lot of the detail out in just that. So you can have one big solid open area with no lines in it showing any detail, and the end result with all your color variations is a very nice, complete, very detailed piece without actually having to do all that tedious little work in there. And plus you got to keep in mind, you can always add detail to it as you're going along. It's better to do it slightly more simple than you think might be necessary and then add it as you see fit. Because obviously it's a tattoo, and once it's in the skin, it's in there, it's not going anywhere. Which is why it's always better to underdo it and have to go back into it and, you know, darken areas up or add a little more to it later.